I just thought, at the end of 50 days, if you make it, uh, you know, have some ouzo and Greek dance for a while. But if, but if you don't, die trying. Leave it all on the track. Like don't quit until you're in the hospital, basically.
Welcome back to the Max Out Show, where I'm joined today by an icon of the athletic world, ultramarathon man Dean Karnazes. On his 30th birthday, Dean decided to leave a job that made him miserable and instead become a runner, and he hasn't looked back since. Dean has won the Badwater Ultramarathon, considered the toughest race in the world, and set a world record for the longest distance ever run without stopping, 350 miles, which is 500 kilometers. Time magazine named him one of the most influential people in the world, and Men's Fitness called him one of the fittest athletes on the planet. So we'll take a deep dive today into dealing with pain and what it takes to become the best version of yourself.
Thank you for having me on. I should say that I'm very sorry it's been such a process to get together, but I'm really happy to be here. So thank you.
It's been very hard, but I'm so happy. It's always so cool to connect with people that I've been looking up to for so long. And I think you're someone that is just so inspiring for so many people around the world. And so I want to start out with this idea of dancing in the rain, because even with all those accomplishments, the feats that you've achieved, this thing that I think will inspire the most people, and the thing that people can really take away from the show today, is the mindset that you've developed and how you've learned to reframe adversity and pain and failure and suffering into something positive. So can you share with us a little bit about how your mindset has evolved since you started your running journey?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, running, and especially ultramarathoning, teaches you that, you're better than you think you are, and you can go further than you think you can. Because when you run, even, when you run a marathon, for instance, I don't want to discount how difficult it is running a marathon, but when you run a marathon, there are moments of doubt where you think, I can't go on. This is impossible. I'm not going to make it. And when you push through those low points, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn that you have more resilience than you thought you did. And that is an invaluable lesson that translates to other things, be it business or life.
Yeah, for sure. Because at the end of the day, what I always feel is like life or running is really this exploration of life, right? It's this outward exploration of nature, of beautiful sceneries, of the mountains or the beach. But at the same time, it is this inward exploration and inward search of our best self, isn't it?
So much so. I mean, it's both of those things. And, there's a race that I've done many times here in California, where I'm based, called the Western States 100-mile endurance run. And they say, you run the first 50 miles with your legs and the next 50 miles with your mind. So it really is about self-exploration as much as anything else.
Yeah, for sure. Now, what is it about running that you love so much?
It's such a simple act, isn't it? I mean, running is it's just someone moving a little bit quicker than walking, but it's profound in that, we could spend this entire interview with me trying to articulate what it is I love so much about running. And I'm not sure that anyone listening to this that's not a runner would fully grasp it, but there's something about the freedom of running, just the human body in motion. And there's also something about being unencumbered. I mean, when you run, you don't have anything, right? You have
Yes.
the shirt on your back and the shoes on your feet, but that's very liberating. You're released from the kind of heaviness of all these things we wrap ourselves in. So there's that sort of release and freedom. There's certainly the challenge of running. And then to me, it's, I just love the act of running. I've found that some people seem to need a reason to go running, either to lose weight or to stay in shape, or to, beat their best time. But I found that these people typically, they burn out. They don't last that long, because until you can actually love the act of running, it's not going to be as meaningful, when things get difficult.
Yeah, absolutely love that. I ran cross country track in college in the US, actually, in Florida. And my running coach, she had this saying, she said, I run in the morning so I'm not an asshole during the day. Right. And I loved it because, like, first I was so confused, right? And I was like, this makes so much sense because, like you say, like, it makes you come alive, right? It's the best feeling you can get in the world. And you're totally right in that, like, you can't necessarily describe it. You have to experience it in some sense to fully grasp the power of going out there in nature and truly experiencing the running.
Yeah, I mean, there's running in nature, and I have a very deep relationship with nature. I feel more at home in nature than I do around people, so I have a very strong connection with nature. But unfortunately, I would say most people in the world don't have a very solid connection with nature. They've kind of lost that connection. We go from our air conditioned cars, to our air conditioned buildings, to our air conditioned office. We sit inside all day. And I think I saw a statistic recently that said, most people spend 95% of their time indoors. and,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
I think it should be I think it should be just the other way around.
Yeah, for sure. No, I 100% agree. Now, can you take us back for a moment to your 30th birthday? Because that was a day in your life that really changed everything, wasn't it?
Well, it was, and I will set the stage. I had loved to run when I was a kid, and I ran all the way up until I was in high school. I ran competitively as a freshman in high school, and then when I was 15, I stopped running. I decided that running was boring. It was a waste of time. I had other ways to spend my time, so I stopped running altogether. And then I went through university, and I went through graduate school, and then I went to business school, and I had a very comfortable corporate job in San Francisco. And I was out with my buddies on our 30th birthday, my 30th birthday, doing what a lot of people who turn 30 do. We were drinking heavily, and at midnight, I said that I was leaving, and they said, my friends looked at me. I said, "Well, why are you leaving? It's your 30th birthday. Let's have another round of tequila." And I said, "No, instead of having another round of tequila to celebrate, I'm going to run 30 miles right now to celebrate." Yeah, and they looked at
They
me.
must
They
have thought
laughed
you
at
were
me just like
crazy.
they laughed at me just like you're laughing at me. They said, you're not a runner. You're drunk." And I said, "I am drunk, but I'm still going to do it." And I literally walked out of the bar, and that night I ran 30 miles.
Wow. No, it's just I mean, this story itself is just incredible, right? But I think what's more important than even is what you did afterwards, right? Because it wasn't just this one-time flash of inspiration that then sort of faded away, but you actually learned that you loved running and you took action on it afterwards, right?
Yeah, I mean, I should clarify that the run, it took me all night. I mean, I left at midnight, and I think I arrived at my destination. The sun was coming up, so it was around 7 in the morning. So it was a painful and protracted endeavor just to get through that 30-mile run. But there was something magical about it. There was something that was beyond any experience I'd ever had before. The corporate world and the life I thought would bring me such fulfillment, of a good paycheck, all the stock options and all the perks. They didn't give me the same sort of feeling of deep, profound fulfillment. And that night did. And I thought, there's magic in this. And you're either going to wake up at 50 years old and say, "Man, I wish I would have pursued my dreams," or you're going to pursue your dreams. And I chose the latter.
I love that so much. So what do you say to people? They're in a similar position right now where they know what they want, but they're so scared of giving up this comfortable thing. You said you had a very good job, you had the corporate car, all the perks that come with this traditional American dream. So what was it in you that made you decide, no, I'm gonna go completely different thing. I'm gonna get in this discomfort, right, of quitting my job and chasing something that maybe even seem unreasonable at that point.
No, you're absolutely right. And, but I do have some empathy for anyone who's listening to this thinking, I'm stuck in a job I don't enjoy and I want to be doing something else. It was the single most terrifying decision of my life. It's scary, to your point, to set out on your own. And nowadays it's more commonplace. There's a lot of kind of gig jobs, and there's a lot of more entrepreneurialism than there was, when I made this decision, which is, a couple decades ago. And back then, people just, if you had a good corporate job, you stuck around for 20, 30 years
Yeah.
until your retirement. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I once read someone who had said that, failure doesn't stop people. It's the fear of failure that stops people. So I thought, you know what? Give up your fear. And if you fail, you fail. Maybe you'll move on. Maybe you won't. But I'd rather fail trying and, look back and say, at least I tried, versus look back and saying, I wish I would have tried.
Yeah, I love that so much. And you mentioned this inherent sense of risk that's part of any grand endeavor, right? What was the riskiest thing, the riskiest project you've ever taken on in that time?
Oh, there's been many, but
There's been,
yeah,
yes.
So one time I set out to run 50 marathons in all the 50 U.S. states in 50 days. So
Wow.
it never been done before, and it was this 50-day journey, and I worked with a guy, and he said, it's going to be expensive to do this. I mean, you're going to have to get a bus, you're going to have to fly around, you're going to have to stay in hotels, and so we need to get sponsors. So we ended up putting together a little sponsorship pitch deck, and we went out to some sponsors, and all of these sponsors said yes. So I had
Wow.
the North Face, I had Toyota, I had Timex, these big corporate sponsors. They were all of a sudden giving a lot of cash to get this job done. And, it seemed so great. Like, wow, they said yes. And wow, our bank account's filling, and, now we've got enough money to pull this thing off. And then I started thinking, suppose I don't make it. I mean, I'm saying I'm going to run
Way to
50
put the
marathons in
pressure on,
50.
yes.
Yeah, like I suppose after 5 days I can't get out of bed, and that was a lot of pressure, because all of a sudden, I thought, wow, this is going to be a great, a journey to see if I can pull this thing off. To wow, if I fail, the stakes are pretty high now.
Wow. Yeah. So what gave you the courage then to still pursue that dream?
I just have this attitude of never stop exploring. So I thought, just throw yourself at it and do the best you can, and see if you can pull it off. Just do the best you can, and that's all we can ever do, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if you can look back and say, today I was my best. Today I did the best that I could. You really can't do much more than that. So I just thought, at the end of 50 days, if you make it, have some ouzo and Greek dance for a while. But if you don't, die trying. Leave it all on the track. Like don't quit until you're in the hospital, basically.
Wow, I love that attitude. To give our listeners a little bit of background here, the 50th marathon was, I think, a three flat in New York, right? Which is
Yeah,
just
you're absolutely right.
unbelievable. It was like, what, 20 seconds behind Lance Armstrong when he did his like marathon after, yeah, like on the 50th day, which is just, I mean, unbelievable.
Yeah, and I was clean as well.
Yeah.
They were testing me, and I wasn't
You would have
using
gotten
I
him.
wasn't anything to helping me. Yeah, yeah.
No, I love that. But you did get P. Diddy, so that's. I'm super curious. The physical preparation is one thing, but then the mental game during races is really where it's really settled, right? So what does your self-talk look like when you're, in that race? Maybe it's, that New York Marathon, maybe it's mile 100 and some ultra distance marathon. What does your self-talk look like in those moments when you're fully in pain?
Yeah, so at the start of a race, I have anxiety, as I'm sure many people do, and it doesn't matter if it's for me, a shorter race like a marathon, or 100-mile ultra marathon. I'm nervous and I'm anxious, just as everyone else is. The thing that helps calm me is I just say to myself, today I'm going to be my best. Today I'm going to try my hardest. Like, I am not going to quit. I'm going to run as fast as I can to the best of my ability. And when I cross the finish line, I'm going to be spent. Like, I'm going to be
Yeah.
completely, wiped out. I'm going to leave everything I've got on the course. So today, just be your best. And that seems to quell my nerves a little bit, because I know you can't control the weather, you can't control your competitors, you can't control a lot of things, but you can control yourself. So that is just my commitment at every starting line, is today I'm going to try my hardest. What gets me through some of these low points, I have mantras, I have all kinds of things. I mean, I always when things get really tough, I haven't slept for days and I've run hundreds of miles and I still have, 50 miles to go. I always say to myself, suck it up, buttercup.
And that pizza probably also helps, right?
Pizza helps, yeah. So have some fun with it as well, yeah.
Yeah, can you walk us through a little bit for some of our listeners that have no idea what it's like to run for that long? Like, what is it like to run these huge distances? I mean, there's the whole organizational aspect, right, of like ordering those pizzas to the next intersection. There's a whole, blisters on the feet. There's the whole pain. Like, what does that preparation look like beforehand?
Well, some of the things I do is things like, on Friday night, I'll set off on a run. I live in San Francisco, so I'll set off on a run going north. I'll just tell my wife I'm heading up to Napa Valley, and the course I follow is about 100 miles. Wow. So I'll carry put on a hydration pack and, bring my phone and a credit card, so I can stop along the way at if I get hungry or whatever. And I'll basically just run for, 17, 18, 19 hours. I'll just run straight through the night up to Napa Valley. And then, she'll drive up in the morning and we'll spend the weekend together. So, people think it's crazy. What, you're doing a 100-mile training run? But I do things like that quite often.
Yeah, wow. It really puts, I guess, the races then in perspective, right? Because when you train that hard and that much, I guess it's sort of comparably easy to run a marathon on any given day, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to discount the difficulty of a marathon, because a marathon is a serious endeavor. The thing is, when you've run 100 miles or 200 miles without stopping, you have a certain confidence going into the start of a marathon that you probably will finish. It might not be the time you want, but you probably will finish.
Yeah. For sure. It's so interesting. So I'm really curious, like, what's the next big project for you right now? I guess kind of sort of on hold probably, for the being.
I mean, just so listeners understand, we're right in the middle of this pandemic right now, the COVID-19 pandemic. So we all have incredible restrictions on our lives. I had a really full schedule this year. I mean, I was supposed to be traveling. I was supposed to be in South America. I was supposed to be in Australia. I was supposed to be in Europe.
Wow.
I'm saying was supposed to be because every single event that I had scheduled for 2020 has been canceled. So now I've got nothing on my schedule. I'm going to do things though, like there's a local race here that I'd signed up for called the Miwok 100, and that's in a couple weeks. So I'm just going to show up at the starting line, at 5 a.m. and just do a virtual run myself. I'm just going to run the course by myself. Things like that. I mean, I'm doing the best that I can with the limitations we have on us right now.
Yeah, for sure. I think those virtual races are coming more and more often, right? Of people like trying to measure up themselves, like around the world, right? Trying to see who can run the longest or whatever it is.
Some of it's about competition, but it's not the same. I have to be honest, because I've done a few of them. Sure. It's just not the same. So the virtual races now that I'm doing more are just like tomorrow I'm doing there's a virtual 5K for Earth Day. And you basically sign up, you register, you pay your entry fee, and then at any time during the day, I mean, you have 24 hours, you run a 5K, and that's the virtual run. I mean, it's not even a race. I mean, I don't know if people are tracking on their time, but it's just more, camaraderie, if you will.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm really curious. Is it different for you, like going into like a race with actually competition, trying to win the thing, like the Badwater, whatever it is, versus, your own personal project where you just run for 100 miles, like on your own? Like, is there a different mindset and focus?
Yeah, I mean, I've never honestly gone into a race, with the exception of one race, the Badwater Ultramarathon in 2004, that I just said I want to win this race. That's why I'm going to this race, is to win. That's the only time I've done a race where I've said that's my goal, is I want to win.
Wow.
I happened to win, so I was
Yes, yeah,
very
it
happy
worked
that
out well.
it
So
worked
what was
out.
different that year? Like, was it just like I wanna really go for it this year and just see, or why that year?
Yeah, I'd run the race in 2003, and I was runner up, so I came in second place. But I never took it seriously. Like I always thought of, running 135 miles across Death Valley in the middle of summer. I've always thought of it as this grand adventure. It transcended racing. To me, a race was a stopwatch, and it was a man-made construct. Where this, to me, the Badwater Ultramarathon was this great, man against nature sort of thing, and for survival. But the person that won was very competitive, and I noticed toward the end of the race, like they were really paying attention to where I was at. Like I was kind of gaining on them, and all of a sudden it was like this really competitive thing, and I thought, oh, this is interesting. Like they don't see it as this grand adventure as I'm seeing it. They see it as they want to win, and they did win, and I came in second. And I thought, I would have won that race had I really tried. I just never really tried. And go back next year and see, and really try and see how things go. And it was a different experience, I have to say. Running competitively to win the race versus just running it for the grand adventure of it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So was it actually less enjoyable to you that year?
I would say it was. Yeah, it was definitely a less enjoyable experience. I mean, there's a lot more pressure. Everything was about looking at your clock, and it was a different experience altogether. Yeah, and it was, I would say, not quite as pleasurable.
Yeah, I can relate so much, right? Because what I found in my own running is like anytime I set like specific goals for like how fast I want to be, right? I want to be like this position in a race. It stops being fun, right? It becomes like this business quote unquote thing where like you have to deliver a certain outcome, right? And only if you get that thing are you going to be happy, and otherwise you go home depressed and miserable.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You said, I mean, that to me is such a farce. I mean, I know people that have run, 100-mile races, and they said, I missed the cutoff. I missed the 24-hour cutoff by 5 minutes. I'm like, you hold it. You ran 100 miles in like 24 hours and 5 minutes, and you're disappointed. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's like, to me, was so wrong. But a lot of people think that way. And I never want to get caught up in that, because to me, it just changes the whole dynamic in a not so great way.
Yeah, it really seems like you just have this love for running and like the activity itself, right?
Everything about it. Yep. And I've taken measures to protect that love, and to notice when I have less of that love. And I just notice that when I'm really racing, I have less of that love. So don't race as much. Just go for the enjoyment.
Wow, that is so interesting. What do you think people struggle with the most? Because like whenever I talk to people and like we talk about running, it's like, oh my gosh, it's so painful, it's so boring, right? Like how how can people start to sort of get off the couch and begin to see running in that same way?
Someone said to me, "Doesn't running hurt?" And I said, "It does if you're doing it right." so so some people seem to embrace the struggle. Others, they try to avoid the struggle. And I think it just comes down to your mindset. I mean, a runner is someone that kind of embraces pain and embraces hardship, and sees these things as something that brings a person to life. Where if you watch television, I mean, half the ads are, oh, take this pill and you won't have pain.
Yeah.
Take this pill and you'll feel better. Or we just say, let's go running.
Let's get
Kind of
running.
like that'll kind of like what your coach said, right? You know, like let's go running in the morning so I'm not an asshole and I feel good the rest of the day.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I have a couple of things there, right? So one is like whenever I got headaches, I go out and run, and for whatever reason, those stops, right? I
Yeah.
don't know if it's just because my legs hurt or whatever. And then the second thing that was always fun, really fun, was on a like easy day, right? Just 6-7 miles, whatever, and our legs were heavy, and we're like, oh, coach, we're tired, right? She'd say, hey, run some more, right? Like do 5 more because you're tired, right? And it's so funny, but for whatever reason, then you actually start to feel better over, just those 12 or 13 miles then sometimes.
No, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
love
I mean,
that.
people say, do you ever not run? And in 2.5 decades of running pretty hardcore, the longest stretch I've gone without running has been 3 days,
Wow.
and that's because I got very sick. I had the flu, and after 3 days,
But even there's 3 days, or it's just can't
three
do it.
days, 3 days of just being really sick, and I
Mm.
thought I'm not getting any better. Might as well go running. I went running, and then the next day I was better. Like
Wow.
next day I got better. So yeah,
Wow. So see, could you ever do another sport? Would it ever be appealing to you?
but yeah. No, I mean I love a lot of other sports. Outdoor sports. I mean I was a big surfer when I was younger. I grew up in Southern California, so I surfed my whole life. I love mountain biking. I love rock climbing. They're always outdoor solo sports.
Yeah.
But
A little bit
yeah,
more
no, I love,
extreme than than golfing,
yeah,
maybe.
yeah,
But
yeah, but I really do like a lot of other sports.
no, I love that. No, the one thing we always do on the show is we love to celebrate failure as a stepping stone to building more character in our lives. So throughout your career, do you have a favorite failure?
Yeah, there's a race that's called the Leadville Trail 100,
Wow.
and it's quote unquote. I mean, this is how absurd the circles I run in are, but it's a quote unquote easy 100. So it's in Leadville, Colorado. I mean, it starts at over 10,000 feet above sea level, and it goes up to nearly 13,000 feet above sea level. So I don't know how you classify that as being easy,
No way.
but it's not the most difficult race I've done. So I went there the first year, and everything was going great, and then I got altitude sickness at mile 85. So I mean, I was doing great. All of a sudden, I get into an aid station at mile 85, and I couldn't even say my name. I couldn't follow
Wow.
on someone's finger moving back and forth. So they said, you better drive him down to Denver. So I failed, and I thought, all right, I'm going to go back. Well, I went back the next year, and I tripped on a root and cracked a rib.
Shoot.
So I failed again.
Mm.
And I thought, okay, this quote unquote easy 100 miler is just crushing me. And so I went back a third time, and I was having a horrible race. I mean, the wheels just came off, so to speak. And I got to the finish line. And even though it was one of my slower races, I'll never forget it because I did everything I could. I didn't give up. I made it to the finish line. It wasn't pretty, but I got there.
Yeah, that's so interesting, especially this mindset of never giving up, right? Like if you fail twice and you still come back after getting your ass beaten sort of thing twice in a row, right? To still then suffer all the way through but finish. So I love that.
Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of people would hear a story like that and they'd say, oh,
This is
my
not for
God,
me.
you're so lucky you didn't die out there. I'm
Yeah.
sure you never went back. And my attitude was, what do you mean?
Yeah, of course it
I'm
did.
gonna die. I'm gonna get to the finish line until it kills me. Yeah, of course I went back. Yeah.
No, I love that. Now, I'm super curious. What has running taught you about life? Are there any lessons that you've learned?
I've learned so many lessons. I mean, I think that one is, being alone and by yourself is not a bad thing. So I know a lot of people that don't enjoy being by themselves, but we're essentially born into this world alone, and we leave this world alone. So getting comfortable with yourself I think is something that really helps with spirituality. I also think that running, it improves your mood. We know that a fit body is a fit mind. So physical activity has been shown to improve mood and improve your thinking and your outlook on life. So I know a lot of my friends that are they suffer from depression, and they've tried all different types of things, and they said it's running is the only thing that
Yeah.
keeps me out of it. So running for health is another reason that I think that running is important. And I also think that it's just learning to enjoy something that's simple and slow and hard. I mean, in our lives, things are so fast and so quick, especially with, you know, the rise of smartphones. I mean, it's just instant gratification. I think I saw a study where the average person's attention span is 8 seconds. That's crazy. I mean,
Yes.
that's like a product of AI. Like, I don't want to be that. That's not what a human is. So I think that it's important to have that balance. I mean, sure, you can be, on your phone all day, but put it down at a point and just go run.
Yeah, it's so true because like this painful act of running is almost the exact opposite of this immediate gratification, right? Because you won't see results right away. You won't get this instant dopamine hit in your brain when it says, "Hey, this is feeling good," right? No, it sucks in the beginning oftentimes, and it's painful at times, but somehow there's such joy and beauty at the same time in the process. So I
I
love
think
what you said.
yeah, I think it transcends, all the superficiality we have around us. It makes you human. It makes you
Yeah,
real. Yeah.
it makes it real. Yes, yes. Do you have any other spiritual practices in your life?
I've tried to meditate and I really suck at it. The only time I can meditate is when I'm running. And, I think that's fine. I mean, there's an African proverb that says, when you pray, move your feet.
Yeah.
So I think any runner knows, we're closest to God, however we define God, when we're moving, not when we're sitting idle. So I don't meditate. I do yoga, but more just for stretching. And I do the hot yoga. So it's also quite a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that point you're making on meditation. In fact, one of my mentors, Nicola Toast, she's an Olympic champion in snowboarding that was on the show. What she said to me, it was find what you love most and make it your meditation. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing, right? You're taking that thing that you love most and you make it your meditation because you're able to create the same kind of focus during running that other people, might be able to do in some lonely mountain hut up out there in the woods, right?
Well, I like her quote. I mean, I thought you were going to say something different, which is a quote that is one of my favorites is find what you love and let it kill you.
You're probably also doing that.
I'm doing that. I'm living that. Yep.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm really curious is like, so there's the pain for running in that moment, but then there's also the fatigue that you experience throughout the rest of the day, right? So have you found any ways of sort of mitigating that and managing that, learning to still live, a normal life in those, other 18 hours that you're not running a day with
Well, I
that
think,
fatigue?
yeah, I think that I am most fatigued when I'm sitting down.
Wow.
So I find that if I stand up all day, like even right now, I hope you're not sitting down. I'm not sitting down. I'm bouncing around my toes. I'm walking around the room. I never sit down.
Yes,
And
that's the best
so
way.
yeah, I mean, even after a grueling marathon or grueling ultra marathon, the next day, I always get up and I run. I mean, it might not be a long run and it might just be a shuffle, but I'll cover a couple miles. And I think that that's really important is that this kind of active recovery really helps versus just passively sitting around.
Yeah, I love that. Now, Dean, if you could give our listeners just one challenge today, one action step to take away from this, what would be that one thing?
Okay. Every morning, the first thing you do when you get up is 10 burpees. It's not a lot, I promise you, but it's miserable just to get out of
Yes.
bed before you do anything else, before you go get your coffee, before you make your bed, do 10 burpees every morning without exception. And that's my challenge to you.
Wow, is that sort of your morning routine to just wake yourself up?
That's what I do. And I think especially now with what we're all experiencing, I think routine is so important. And just a little bit of grunting and a little bit of elevated heart rate and some deep breathing first thing out of bed, it just sets the tone for the rest of the day.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely love that. Now, before I ask my final question, where can listeners connect with you online?
Just type in my name in any search engine, like just type in Dean. And someone said when you type in Dean, I'm the first Dean that comes up. But type in Dean Karnazes, and I've got a website, and obviously I'm on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, just you can check me out that way.
Perfect. Now, what does it mean for you to max out your life?
I think my definition of failure is not living up to your potential. We're not all Einstein. We don't have to be, but we all have some potential. And if you fail to live up to that, I think that's a great disappointment.
All right, guys, that's it for today. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you gained some valuable ideas, tips, tools, tricks, mindsets, belief systems that will hopefully inspire you to take your life to the next level. At the end of the day, guys, it's all about application. The only thing that's going to set you apart tomorrow from where you are today is how much action you take with those ideas that you gained. And so I really want to challenge you at this point to, not just listen to this passively, to not just consume this, passively, just think about other things, but to really take those lessons, take those ideas that you just gained and start applying them to your lives, to really start taking action and sprinting towards those goals and those dreams that you have in your life. Now, guys, at this point, I want to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider heading over to iTunes and leaving a review, as that helps me really grow the show and reach more people, impact even more people around the world. If you have a family member, a friend, a loved one maybe, that you think could benefit from this content, please consider, sharing it with them, forwarding to them, as that helps us really build a community of like-minded people that are all about maxing out their lives. Now, guys, with that being said, thanks so much for tuning in today. I really, really appreciate it. Stay strong and see you tomorrow.